Hi again, everyone. If you saw a little bit ago, we were briefly live and then we lost connection, so we are restarting from the very top. I'm Nicole with Together We Will, Cincinnati, Southwest Ohio, and with me today is Alan Triggs. He is a candidate for Hamilton County Municipal Judge in District 2.
District 2.
And that is Central Hamilton County, Central Cincinnati, and I will list a little bit later some of the neighborhoods that are in District 2 for you. But in the meantime, we're going to be connecting our live feed with some other websites. Together We Will, East Cincinnati, United We Stand, and Indivisible Cincinnati for All are all picking up this live feed. While they're connecting, let me tell you how to ask a question if you have one for Alan. Click on the video feed and type your question in the comments. And we have some people back behind the scenes here who will retrieve your comment and pass it along to me. And I will stop what I'm doing and I will ask your question. So feel free to volunteer your question, whatever it is, about municipal courts, about the election, and about Alan in particular, and I will pass it along. If you are a candidate for municipal judge in Hamilton County, we do ask that you don't ask questions, just because there are other forums for that. I wanted to let you know that we are doing other Q&A events with other candidates. For instance, next week we'll be with Kareem Moffett. She is running for Cincinnati School Board. And August 15th, Mayor Cranley will be with us, so please do join us for that. And then in September, we will host Yvette Simpson as well. If you have a friend who might be interested in this Q&A, please feel free to share it. The feed is public. Be on the lookout for future events. Look for us on Facebook, Together We Will, Cincinnati, Southwest Ohio, and we'll announce future events there. We're also on Twitter, TWWSWOH, and you can find recordings of all our previous Q&As on YouTube. If you search for TWWSWOH, you will find it, but we will also post a link in the comments. I think that is all the preliminaries, so I'm going to assume that people are connecting in, and I'm going to go ahead with some information about Alan and his candidacy.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for being with us tonight.
No, thank you for having me.
Alan has some social media, and of course he has a website, so if you want to look him up, look for triggsforjudge.com. That's your website.
Yes.
And you can find him on Facebook at Triggs Law, and on Twitter at Triggs Law, and that's TRIGGS. Yes?
Correct.
Yes. And like I said, he's a candidate in District 2. District 2 includes St. Bernard, which is where I'm from, so I'm happy that I am interviewing a candidate who I can vote for. Mount Airy, North Side, North Avondale. You said a small part of Clifton and a small part of Roselawn.
Yes.
Yes. Paddock Hills, Bond Hill, Pleasant Ridge, Kennedy Heights, Madisonville, Madison Place, and College Hill.
Yes.
Did I get everything?
I do believe you have everything.
I think I wrote it all down. We're looking
Yes.
at it to make sure I got everything. And you were actually born and raised right here in Cincinnati in Bond Hill.
Born and raised in Bond Hill, yes.
Yeah, all right. And a graduate of Walnut Hills High School.
In 1988.
And we were just talking about, I also graduated from high school in 1988. And you got your BS in Finance and Accounting from Memphis State University.
Memphis State University, now known as the University of Memphis, the home of Elvis Presley.
Really?
And
I
a
didn't
little
know
side
that.
note, I did an accounting internship at Graceland. So I
No
actually
way.
worked for the Elvis estate and Priscilla Presley.
You just got my mother-in-law's vote.
All right, all right.
And if I understand correctly, your law degree is from the University of Akron School of Law.
That is correct.
But you also have a degree that I haven't heard very much of called an LLM, or a Master of Laws.
That is correct.
And am I correct that that is like a specialty postgraduate law degree?
It is.
And yours is in business law?
Business law.
From Concord School of Law. Where's that?
That's in Los Angeles, California.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
But you're licensed to practice law all over the place.
Yes, I'm licensed first in North Carolina, then Ohio, Kentucky, Georgia, and federal courts in Ohio, Colorado, and the United States Tax Court.
Wow. Now, is it a separate licensing process
For each state. It is.
And then you said you're licensed in federal courts. Is that a separate licensing process as well?
It is. Every state is different. After a certain period of time, you can actually waive into states to get a license. Every state except for those states where people retire. So like Florida, South Carolina, California, Arizona, you can't waive in. You actually have to take their bar exam.
Okay, and by waive in, what do you mean?
If you have enough experience and you have individuals that will vouch for you, you can waive in and become licensed in that state.
Okay. Okay. And 20 years of experience?
23 years.
23?
Yes.
Wow. And that's in both civil and criminal?
Civil and criminal law.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you more about this later, but I see that you were a Hamilton County magistrate judge for 11 years.
Yes.
We'll go into what that is a little bit later.
Okay.
You can explain that because I'm not sure I understand.
Okay.
And you were also an assistant prosecutor for the city, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. How long were you an assistant prosecutor?
Close to 4 years.
Close to 4 years. Okay. And do you remember when about?
Probably around 96 to 2000 when I was appointed magistrate judge.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. All right. And then that's all I have on you, but what would you like to say about yourself and your campaign?
Well, I'm a native Cincinnatian, born and raised. As you stated, I went to Walnut Hills High School, and at that school, I mean, it's a very difficult school, you know, coming from my background, but I knew that I wanted to do more. And it's a funny story on how I became a lawyer.
Oh, tell us.
So my guidance counselor knew that I was very good at math, and she wanted me to be an engineer, but I didn't want to be an engineer. I wanted to be something different. And I watched a lot of TV with my grandfather. We watched a lot of shows, legal shows, and there was one show called LA Law. I don't know if you remember that show. And there was this guy on there, and he was real smart, and he knew numbers, and I knew numbers. So I wanted to be like this guy on LA Law.
Okay.
His name was Stuart Markowitz, for all of you people who are in my generation, if you know that show. And people wondered, like, wow, how are you going to become a lawyer coming from where you were born and raised? And I just decided, you know, I'm going to take my education from Walnut Hills, and I'm just going to push forward, and I'm going to leave Cincinnati, and I will not return until I'm a lawyer. Okay. And that's exactly what I did. I finished undergrad in 3 years, and then went straight to law school and finished, passed 2 bars on the first try, and then I came back to Cincinnati and became a lawyer. All
right. Well, I'm glad you returned. It's good.
Yes.
Right. Is this your first candidacy for a municipal judge?
For municipal judge, yes.
Yes.
Last year, I ran against Joe Dieters for a prosecutor, and that was an experience. Running countywide against the highest lawyer in the county.
I bet that was an experience.
It was.
I bet you have some stories.
Yes, a lot of stories. Hopefully we'll get into them tonight.
All right, I'll try and be quick on these questions.
Okay.
All right, are you ready for your first question?
I'm ready for my first question.
All right, these are general questions. First one, what would you like voters to know about what municipal judges do?
So I think there's a misconception about court in general. Most people only see the criminal side of court. There are a lot of shows on TV about court and the criminal process, but municipal court handles criminal and civil cases. Mm-hmm. It's about 50-50. So what you see when you come to court, you may see the criminal, but you don't see the civil. And civil takes a lot more time than the criminal. So I want people to know that the judges are doing more than just what you see in the criminal courts. There are a lot of briefs to be written, to be read. A lot of procedure goes into the civil side that not necessarily goes into the criminal side.
Really?
Yes.
So is that because the civil side needs more briefs and background in the cases, or can you briefly address why that is?
Well, with civil cases, you have two parties, one person suing either for money or for some other relief.
Okay.
So once they file the complaint, then the other side gets 28 days to answer. And then once that answer process occurs, then there are more motions and filings and discovery. So it takes a little bit longer to develop a case when it's civil.
That is interesting. I would have thought they would have been the same. So it's good to know.
Right.
All right. Anything else you want to add to that before I ask next? Okay.
Yes.
All right. And then why is it important for people not only to vote for municipal judges, but to vote for the right municipal judge?
I think people really need to do their homework on who we are electing judges. So often when you see individuals being appointed judge, they come from one discipline or the other, but never both. You know,
and what do you mean by discipline? Sorry.
Discipline meaning either criminal or civil.
Okay.
A lot of individuals are appointed judge having been a prosecutor. So they know the criminal side very well, but they haven't practiced any civil law. And then there are some who have been in a civil practice for a long time and they know the civil side very well, but not the criminal side. And I think our judges need to know both sides. And because you're going to handle cases from both sides, you can't pass those cases along to someone else. If the case is assigned to you, it's your case.
Okay. And is there, in Hamilton County, do the judges ever specialize in cases?
No. In municipal court, it is a court of general jurisdiction. I mean, what you get coming in the door is your case.
Okay.
So there is a system of assigning cases to a judge, and when they literally roll the dice and your number comes up, that's your that's your judge.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What qualities do you think voters should consider when they're voting for a judge?
Definitely the first is experience in both criminal and civil law. The second is patience.
Okay.
There are so many cases in municipal court that judges need to be patient. Everyone coming into court has a story to tell, and they want to be heard. Whether it's 5 minutes or 5 hours, they want to tell their side. And as judges, you have to be patient and be prepared to let that individual tell his or her story.
All right. Thank you. All right. And as you know, Together We Will is a progressive group.
Yes.
So what should progressive voters in particular be looking for in a judge?
Someone who is, again, willing to listen, willing to take the time to understand what everyone is going through. I can't stress enough the importance of having a judge that's knowledgeable about the law, knowledgeable about people in general. You know, coming from a diverse background, I think that I not only have the knowledge, because I can get the knowledge through books, but you can't get the knowledge, the street knowledge, from a book. So when an individual come in, I'll give you an example of having committed a theft.
Okay.
And you look at that individual, some people will see them as just a criminal, but you have to really look into the individual to see why are they committing these crimes, and to know, you know, their background, to see where they're coming from, and to understand that maybe they need help more than punishment. Maybe there's a problem at home that we need to solve so that we can solve the problem of them committing these crimes.
And can a judge help with that kind of thing?
Yes, definitely. A judge has discretion to do a lot of things.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I bet a lot of people don't know that.
Yes. I mean, we can be creative in our sentencing in order to help an individual rather than to harm them further.
Excellent.
And hopefully we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, we have some follow-up questions, I think, that will lead into some more about that. So in Hamilton County specifically, what are some of the most important issues facing judges?
As far as the types of crimes being committed or just the overall court system?
I'd be interested in answers to both of those.
Okay, let's talk about the court system. The first, and I think it's on everybody's mind, is the overcrowding of the jails.
Okay.
Our jails are overcrowded. We have individuals who will walk in the door, and before the judges are off the bench, they're out because the jails are just that overcrowded. And it gets a little frustrating when, you know, you want to sentence someone for the crime that they committed, but, you know, the sheriff tells them, well, come back in a month or come back in 2 months to serve your time. And eventually they never serve their time because, you know, a lot of time has passed. So that becomes disheartening when, you know, there are some individuals who should be punished but are not punished. But then there are individuals who are in jail being punished that shouldn't be punished. For instance, if an individual is in jail solely on bond, hasn't had a trial yet, but he's in jail because he can't make bond. And I think sometimes we've seen cases where they're not guilty, but because they couldn't make bond, they served more time than they would have. Some of the crimes that we see that are on the rise, of course, with heroin, all of the crimes associated with the heroin usage. You have child endangering, theft, assaults, prostitution. All of that comes from the need to serve that addiction. So, I mean, that's what we're seeing a lot of.
Okay, so you would say that would be on the criminal side, whereas the first one would be on the court system side.
On the court system. And, you know, with our court system, we have a lot of cases. I mean, the judges are very busy. There are 14 municipal court judges and 5 magistrates. And the judges will have a daily caseload of roughly around 50 cases. And the magistrates can vary depending on whether it's the civil or the criminal arraignments or traffic arraignments. I mean, but those are pretty high as well. But then we also have a number of common pleas judges all in the same building. So imagine the crowds every day that's coming into the buildings. Every case, most cases start at 9 o'clock in the morning. So you have this sea of people coming into the building all at once. And when you walk in, you know, as an attorney, we have, you know, special access with our badge, but you see long lines of people coming into court. And they're outside and they're wondering if they're going to make it to court on time. And I think that's a problem. We need to find a way to lessen those lines, get people in the doors quickly.
Especially when the weather's awful.
Even when it's raining, you'll see a long line. When it's cold, you'll see a long line.
All right. And is that something you think that's solvable?
It is. I do believe it is.
Okay.
I've seen it in other courts, even though those other courts are smaller, but I've seen it to where it can be done.
Okay. Good news. That's fixable.
Yes.
So I did mention that you're running in District 2, but
Yes.
do you want to give us a refresher on what area you would have jurisdiction over if you were elected?
So even though the municipal court judges are elected by district, you still cover entire Hamilton County.
Okay.
Yes.
And do I understand correctly that the reason judges are elected by district is to make sure that all of the districts have representation on the court?
Yes. Some time ago, Mr. Mallory filed a lawsuit, because it was hard for African Americans to win a countywide election.
Okay.
So to solve that problem, they created the districts. And that's why we have the 7 districts in Hamilton County. There are 2 judges per district so that we can have that equal representation.
Do you happen to know how they decided what the districts would be?
That I don't know.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
I couldn't find that. I'll look it up some more when I get home. And I'm correct. We talked about this briefly. You would be working at the downtown courthouse.
Yes.
Yes.
Downtown courthouse.
Okay.
Hopefully in room 220.
Oh, really?
Yes. Judge Cheryl Grant is retiring, and that's her room, and that's the position I'm running for.
Okay. Well, now we know.
Now we know.
Now we know. Okay, so municipal court proceedings.
Yes.
How do they differ from higher court proceedings?
Generally, criminal cases all start the same way,
Okay.
whether they're in municipal court or common pleas court. It's just a different level of offenses. So you start with an arraignment. Everyone has to be arraigned on their charge to let the person know the nature of their charges and possible penalties. And then after that, they may go to a pretrial to get an attorney, or they may go directly to trial. Now, municipal court moves a lot faster than common pleas.
Okay.
Sometimes you go straight to trial in municipal court because there's a time limit on trying cases. And unless a defendant waives time, there's a certain limit on which the prosecutor has to try an individual. So speeding tickets, which are minor misdemeanors, 30 days. And then it goes up from there. So it's just the time factor, how quickly it goes from arraignment to trial.
And tell us a little bit more about what types of cases go to municipal court.
All right, so municipal court are those cases where the possible penalty is less than 6 months, or 6 months or less.
Okay.
So you have driving while under suspension without a license. You have domestic violence, DUIs, of course.
Okay.
All your traffic cases, marijuana charges, disorderly conduct.
Okay. And then you would have some civil cases as well.
Right. So the civil cases are those cases up to $15,000.
Up to $15,000?
Yes.
Okay. And what if they're not looking for money? How do you, because you said there are other types of relief.
Right. So generally, if you're looking for an injunction of some sort, that will be in common pleas court.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Generally, when it comes to municipal court, they're looking for money.
Okay.
Yes.
Good to know. If you are just joining us, I'm Nicole with Together We Will, Cincinnati, Southwest Ohio, and joining us today is Alan Triggs. He's a candidate for Hamilton County Municipal Judge. If you would like to ask a question of Alan about his candidacy, his experience, how courts work, problems that the courts are facing today, all you have to do is click on the feed and put your question in the comments, and I will see it pop up here and I will ask. And speaking of questions, we actually have one.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Will you be determining if a prisoner is eligible and worthy of parole? And if so, what things do you consider in that judgment?
Actually, that's not in municipal court. That would start with the parole board and the sentencing judge in common pleas. So that's not something that is up for discussion with a municipal court judge.
Okay.
That's another misperception about municipal court. I've had individuals come to me and say, hey, you sent my cousin or brother to prison for 6 years. I was like, it wasn't me, because I don't have that type of power to send anyone to jail for longer than a year max with in municipal court.
Okay.
So that's one of those misperceptions. Municipal court judges don't have that type of power.
Okay. And a second question on your aspirations. Would you aspire to run for prosecutor again?
The simple answer to that is yes. After running last year, I didn't think that I would come as close as I did. I didn't know that I had that much support. And as I was, running for judge and having to do speech after speech, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about my experience. I learned a lot about what people want in a prosecutor, someone who will listen. So yes, it is definitely a possibility.
Good to know. All right. How heavy is the current municipal caseload?
Again, it's probably 50 cases a day per judge. There are 14 judges, and that's just criminal.
That's just the criminal
just
side?
the criminal side.
Okay.
And then each judge has his or her own civil caseload as well.
Okay.
So you're talking about a lot of cases that come through municipal court. But then you have 5 magistrates that many people don't talk about. And those are the individuals that work under the judges. Bless you.
I'm sorry.
So, and I was a magistrate. I was a magistrate for 11 years, and I worked under the judges. And I handled all of the cases that were assigned to me from the judges. So with the magistrates, they handle all of the traffic arraignments, criminal arraignments, DUI arraignments. And then you have the civil caseload of the magistrate, which is huge. So there's a court. It's the eviction court. I don't know if you heard of the eviction court. That's where individuals who haven't paid their rent or some other issue with their landlord, it's a separate court. It's every day, and it could be up to 100 cases of individuals doing battle with their landlords. And then we have the most famous court that everybody thinks they're on TV, and that's small claims. And that is just like Judge Judy Joe Brown, and they come in and they sue for whatever.
Okay.
So the magistrates handle that docket as well, and it could be a number of cases on that docket, ranging from boyfriend, girlfriend suing for the engagement ring that they gave. I want my engagement ring back. Just car accidents, things of that nature that, kind of like you see on TV. And the funny thing about it is Judge Joe Brown and those other TV judges actually get cases from Hamilton County.
No way.
Yes. I have signed many orders sending cases to those TV shows.
So I always thought the TV shows were fake.
No, they are real litigants. They get real cases from real courts. But what happens when they leave our court and they go on TV, they're subject to that jurisdiction. And just a little side note, the person on TV is no longer a judge. They're actually an arbitrator.
Interesting.
So it's binding arbitration.
So the robes are just for show.
Well, I think they all were judges before, but once you're on TV, you no longer can be a judge. And so they call them judges, but they're arbitrators.
So where do magistrates come from?
Magistrates are appointed by the judges.
Okay.
So earlier in our discussion, I think off camera, we were talking about how I was a prosecutor for almost 4 years. And one day I was walking down the hall, and a group of judges stopped me and said, "Hey, we want to make you a judge. Would you like to be a magistrate judge?" And of course, I'm thinking like, I'm 29 years old. No. I'm like, I'm not ready for that type of responsibility. And they were like, "Yes, you're ready for that responsibility." So, you go through a panel, and the judges select who they want to be the magistrates.
Okay. And you said go through a panel.
Panel of judges, series of interviews.
Okay. So they approach you about whether you are interested, and then you go through a series of interviews, and then
that's how I was
if all goes well.
That's how I was selected.
Okay.
But now there's, whenever there's an opening, there's application process.
Okay.
I still go through the same interview process.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for enlightening us on that. It said in your bio you were a magistrate judge, and I was like, I don't know what that is. So.
You serve at the pleasure of the judges, the municipal court judges. And you handle all of the cases that they assign to you. I mean, it could be anything and everything that they do. So if a judge is out sick, they will call you and say, "Hey, do my docket." And you have to be ready on the spot to do their docket. And that's what we did every day.
Wow. So it's a little bit like being an understudy?
Yes.
Okay.
It is a good title, understudy. Okay. Yes, I like that.
All right.
On-the-job training, maybe. Yeah.
So we were talking about the caseload, and you mentioned how many cases there are. Is that heavy? And if so, does that affect how judges do their job?
So that is very heavy. Cincinnati is probably in the top 3 in the state, with Cleveland and Columbus. So it's a very heavy caseload, and it can be tiring. I mean, because you start your docket at 9 a.m. Some days you may finish by 11, But some days you may not get out until 6. You just never know, depending on the number of trials.
Do we need more judges?
Possibly.
Can that be done?
Probably not at this point. I think that has to be done by the legislature.
The city legislature, the county legislature, state legislature. Okay.
I think the number of judges is based on the population in the area.
Okay.
And then they decide how many judges you will get in that, geographical area.
Okay, thank you. So we talked a little bit about the biggest issues facing the municipal court system right now.
Yes.
Do you want to add anything about how you would approach those issues?
I mean, as far as the jail overcrowding, I would make sure that when I set bonds, I'm setting the bonds for what it's intended for. A lot of people think that you set a bond based on the crime that was alleged to have been committed, but that wasn't the original intent of a bond.
Okay.
A bond was designed to make sure individuals appear back in court. So if a person is more likely to appear in court, the bond is lower. But if they're, have a high flight risk, then their bond is higher. But then you also have to consider the harm that could be caused if this person is let back on the street.
Okay.
So those are the two factors that weigh into setting a bond. And I would make sure that my bonds are reasonable, fit the individual, not just a random number. Because sometimes judges can just set a random number and you'll see everyone get the same bond over and over.
Okay.
And they're sitting there in jail because they can't make that same bond that everyone else has received.
I've actually seen a few articles in the news lately where somebody was arrested for a crime and then couldn't make the bond and wound up being in jail for quite some time before some circumstance happened that allowed them to leave.
Right.
So are you talking about that?
And many times you will see where an individual is in jail on a high bond, they can't get out, and they go to court and they just plead guilty because they've already served the maximum time.
Oh.
So, for instance, if the maximum time is 30 days and they've already served their 30 days, then you say, I might as well just plead guilty. Why go to trial? Because you can't give me any more time. You just want to let me out anyway.
That doesn't sound fair.
Doesn't sound fair. We've had individuals who were charged with a crime and the witnesses just not show up. But they've spent 2 weeks, 3 weeks in jail only for their case to be dismissed because they couldn't post the bond.
Okay.
So I want to make sure that our bonds are fair and that, we save that space for individuals that need to be in, not the ones that just have, parking tickets or minor misdemeanors that just, they don't show up in court, but, we can't just lock them up just because of that. We need to save that jail space.
Do you face any requirements when you're setting a bond? Are there any impositions on you?
No, the judges have a lot of leeway on how they want to set their bonds.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Let's switch to some questions about your background and your campaign.
Okay.
Okay. So you talked about wanting to be a lawyer from seeing LA Law.
Yes.
Yes. Do you know what it was that appealed to you about being a lawyer?
Just the excitement. So let's carry that story a little forward. When I came to Cincinnati and I was a lawyer, I was a tax lawyer.
Okay.
I was working for a tax firm, Municipal bonds is what we did.
Okay.
Tax exempt bonds.
Okay.
It's a long story. It'll bore you to death. I don't want to tell you about that because it bored me to death. So one day I'm walking to the courthouse just for one of the partners to file something for him. And I sat there and I watched municipal court. And there was this guy, he was in court and he was just animated. And he looked like he was having so much fun at his job. He was a prosecutor. And I was like, wow, that's what I really want to do. So I quit my job and became a prosecutor.
Okay.
And that person is Fanon Rucker, and he's my best friend. And we have been best friends since the day I started as the prosecutor, and it's been almost 20 years.
Wow.
And because I saw him in court, made me want to become what they say a real lawyer. You know, there are lawyers who are in the, you know, the ivory towers, but the ones that are in the trenches, you know, the prosecutors, the public defenders, the defense attorneys that are in there fighting every day, that's where the fun is. And that's municipal court every day.
For those of you who aren't acquainted with Judge Rucker, what district is he in?
He is in District 1.
And if I understand correctly, his race is uncontested this year.
That is correct. That's
so
correct.
he is running this year, but no one's opposing him.
No one's opposing him.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you have any specific judicial philosophies other than what you've already discussed with us?
The one thing that I can say, respect.
Okay.
Make sure you have respect. Respect for the individual that appears before you, and force them to have respect for the court. And I think the court has lost a lot of respect. I have a pet peeve.
Oh, what's your pet peeve?
I do not like what we call the wife beater. You know, the shirts with the sleeves.
Like the tank top type
Yes,
things?
yes.
Yeah.
I don't think that's appropriate for court.
Okay.
So I don't like to see them come in, but I know that we have become lax in the respect for the court. I've been to other courts in this country and in other parts of the world where you have to come into court dressed for court. So I think that my philosophy would be is everyone show respect for each other, respect each other's time, start court on time, be in court on time, dress appropriately for court, and just make sure that you're giving me the respect that I deserve, and I will give you the respect that you deserve. And then we let the law work from there.
All right. So you don't like tank tops on men in the courtroom. How do you feel about sleeveless dresses on women in the House of Representatives?
I think everyone should dress appropriately for the occasion.
Okay.
So no.
No.
No sleeveless.
No sleeveless.
No.
Oh, no. You're breaking my heart. You're breaking my heart, man. All right. I asked you this off camera. I'm going to ask you on camera now. Have you been both a defending attorney and a prosecuting attorney?
Yes, I have been both. And I've also handled civil cases as well. So I've prosecuted individuals, I've represented individuals accused of committing crimes, and I've handled both sides of the civil litigation process, the plaintiff and the defendant. So I have been in every position in the court system.
Wow. Okay. And you've been a magistrate judge?
Yes.
And a prosecutor?
Yes.
Yes.
And a corporate lawyer.
And a corporate lawyer.
And a tax lawyer.
And you do math?
And I do math.
You do math?
Yes.
Okay.
You wouldn't believe this, but math and accounting comes in very handy when you're a judge. You wouldn't think
bet,
so.
actually.
But when you're dealing with civil cases, and we deal with a lot of cases involving landlord-tenant, and when an individual moves out, there's always damages, and calculating those damages. And landlords really didn't like me calculating their damages because I knew how to calculate depreciation.
Oh.
So I would depreciate all of their assets. When they would want, $2,000 for carpet, I would say, well, let's depreciate that because carpet only has a certain useful life. So they were like, wow, I didn't think of that. I was like, well, that's what you get when you get an accountant up here. I mean, and that's that experience that I'm talking about. Experience in all areas of life to where you can make decisions and make good decisions.
Yeah, that does seem like a very important consideration.
Yes.
Okay. Shall we move on to some specific issues?
Yes.
People had,
yes.
In case you're wondering where these questions are coming from, I have asked a few live questions, and if you have a question that you would like me to ask, please do comment with your question, and I'll relay it. The other questions we solicited from our Facebook group, so that is where they are coming from. Drug offenses.
Yes.
We've touched on this.
A little bit.
We've touched on this a little bit. Do you want to talk more about the approach that you would take with drug offenders? Keep in mind, including those who've committed crimes related to their addiction.
Yes. So I think there's a dual approach.
Okay.
You have to first approach the addiction and get treatment for those individuals. But you also have to deal with the crime that they've committed. Just because they have this addiction does not mean that they should go free on the crime that they've committed. So some of these crimes are against other individuals, you know, like theft, assault, child endangering. Mm-hmm. So yes, get them help for their addiction so that they don't commit these crimes again, but I think there still should be some punishment for their crimes.
How often are people arrested purely for addiction and not for a related crime?
In municipal court, I don't think ever.
Okay.
Because it's always related to a crime. So
Okay.
a crime has to occur in order for you to get into court.
All right, so nobody is arrested just for public intoxication?
Yes, you can be, but that's called disorderly conduct.
Okay,
Right?
got it.
So it's a disorderly conduct, and then we wonder, okay, why are you being this way? And then we find out that you have an alcohol problem. So
Okay.
we try to solve that alcohol problem through treatment, but it's hard with disorderly conduct because the most time that you can get in jail for disorderly conduct is 30 days. Mm-hmm. Not much you can do in 30 days.
As far as treatment?
As far as treatment. But most disorderly conducts are payout tickets. The maximum penalty is a $150 fine plus court costs.
Oh.
I mean, so it's hard to treat that level of addiction. But when it comes to the heroin use and you have the child endangering, the thefts, the assaults, things of that nature, there's a little more time that we can work with to get them treatment. We have treatment in the jail that they're allowed to attend if they want to. I mean, and if the judge feels that it would be worthwhile. Sometimes you can help people, and then you realize they don't want to help themselves. So the individual has to take some responsibility as well. They have to want the help and really want to do better for themselves, not just say they want help to get out of punishment for this crime over here.
Okay, thank you. We have a live question. Are all cases in municipal court jury trials?
No. You're only entitled to a jury trial if you are facing loss of liberty, meaning you're going to go to jail. So minor misdemeanors like the disorderly conduct, that's only punishable by a $150 fine plus court costs, you're not entitled to a jury trial.
Okay.
All right. So anything that carries a jail sentence, you're entitled to a jury trial.
So a civil case would generally not be a jury trial? Would that be true?
Oh, I was speaking of only criminal.
Okay.
Okay, so in civil cases, in municipal court, anything other than small claims, you can request a jury trial.
Okay.
So, but that's up to the plaintiff. If the plaintiff wants a jury trial, of course there's an extra fee for a jury trial in civil cases, not in criminal cases, but in civil cases.
It's not up to the defendant?
No, it's up to the plaintiff.
Really?
For civil.
Really?
For criminal, it's up to the defendant.
Okay. All right, that makes sense.
Yes.
I'm following. Okay. If you have a follow-up question to that, please feel free to add it in.
So, you get it? Civil, plaintiff.
Civil plaintiff.
Criminal
defendant.
Yes.
Yes. I am wrapping my
There we
head
go.
around
All
that.
right.
It's working.
It's a lot to learn. It's a lot to learn in 45 minutes.
Yeah, you're dropping a lot of information on me here. Okay. So about addiction, do you feel that our prisons in this area are adequately dealing with it?
Based on the recidivism, I would say no.
Okay.
Individuals are still coming out and wanting to use again. And we see them time and time again back in court. So something is not working within the system. Or they're not going through the system and really wanting to change. They're just going through trying to hurry up and get out of their situation in jail or in prison. You know, sometimes you can get released early if you complete a program. So sometimes they will do everything they can to complete that program, and then they get out and then they go right back to using. I mean, so I think we need to do more screening, monitoring to make sure that there's aftercare when they're released from prison, that they're still going through some type of treatment so that they don't go back into that same lifestyle.
Can judges help with that?
Yes.
Is there anything you can do?
Yes, it can be part of your sentence that, you know, if you are released early, you're still on a period of probation, and conditions of your probation, you can, you know, name certain things that you have to complete. You know, random urine screens, making sure you meet with your probation officer, you know, every so often, making sure you attend AA or NA or some other program to make sure we follow up, to make sure you don't use again.
Okay, good to know. The next question is, when should drug offenders be punished and when should they be addressed with treatment? But I think you probably covered that. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Definitely when there's someone else involved, when there's a child involved. You know, there are instances where those individuals are seeking that fix, and they will harm an elderly person or, you know, steal from someone just to get that fix. And I think those individuals definitely need punishment along with the treatment.
In cases of child endangerment, do the municipal judges have any say in disposition of the children?
No, that's all handled through juvenile court.
Okay.
Yes.
Code violations.
Yes.
There have been a lot of cases in the news
Yes.
locally lately.
Yes.
So tell me about the role municipal judges play in code violations.
So there is one judge. He is in charge of the housing court.
Okay.
That handles all of the code violations. There's a special prosecutor who is in that room all the time. That is his assignment. So there's one specialized court for those code violations. That's Judge Bernie Bouchard. He is the judge now.
Okay.
It was Judge Brad Greenberg, but after last year's election, there was a rotation, and now it's a different judge.
But it's a municipal judge like the kind you're running for.
Yes.
But set aside.
Set
for
aside
code
part
violations?
of his docket.
Part of his docket.
Part of his docket. So
okay.
Along with everything else that I've described, he has this specialized docket to handle.
To handle code violations.
With a lot of code violations. Earlier I told you that I do community service through pro bono.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of those cases are in housing court for those individuals charged with overgrown weeds, overgrown grass, you know, needing repairs on their homes. So I represent those individuals in that court.
So you have some insight into how this works.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
good, because we have more questions.
Okay.
Do you believe homeowners should be arrested or serve jail time for code violations?
I do not. Some of the individuals, they just can't afford to make those repairs on the home. And that's why I decided to do pro bono work for those individuals who need that representation. Once you're cited and you can't pay the high fine, and then you're brought into court and now you're facing jail time, and they can't afford to pay for their repairs, they can't afford the high fines, they definitely can't afford an attorney. So I want to make sure that those individuals have some type of representation so that we can get to some solution other than jail time, other than paying this high fine. You know, maybe use that money to make the repairs. I mean, but they don't have money to do either, so we have to find resources elsewhere. And that could be through church, through other organizations that, you know, Habitat for Humanity, those resources are out there. We just have to look for them.
Okay, good to know.
So definitely don't think that they deserve to be hauled into court facing jail time for not being able to afford those repairs.
Okay. Another question that our group had was about disparities, racial disparities in particular, in the judicial system. What can you do about that as a judge?
There's a lot that we can do. And I like to just talk by example. Now, when I see individuals in court, there are these inherent biases that we may have. So what I normally do is I just close my eyes. That way I don't see anyone. All I do is I hear the facts, I hear the arguments, and I make my decisions based off of what I hear and not what I see. Because it's easy to make a decision, when the guy comes in with the wife beater on, and I can just say, all right, you're guilty. But if I don't see that, if I take that out of my mind, and I think everybody's on the same playing field, and all I'm doing is listening for the facts and applying the law. Another thing that I have learned is that it's not just black and white. We have a lot of Hispanics in our community. And, at Walnut Hills, we had to take 2 languages, Latin and another one. So my other language was Spanish. So I made sure to bone up on my Spanish speaking ability so that I can converse with those individuals coming into court to make them feel like, we do care about you. We are taking the time to, meet you where you are so that you can have your say in court. Now, we do have Spanish interpreters there full time, but sometimes they're not available. And I just want to make sure that, they don't feel like they're being discriminated against. So being able to speak in their language, helps ease them when they come into court. It helps keep the flow of the court process going until we can get an interpreter there. So it's just making those little gestures of making sure that everyone has their day in court, everyone is represented, and no one is judged based off of the clothes they wear, the color of their skin, their sexual orientation, or anything like that.
Oh, thank you. We discussed very briefly, and before I ask you this question, I just want to let our viewing audience know that we're close to wrapping up. So if you have any questions you'd like to get in, please ask now so that I can make sure to ask before we close for the evening. We talked about people who are being held for 30 days on bond, and then they wind up pleading guilty because they've already served the maximum time for whatever they're charged with.
Right.
So a related question, what is the current role of plea bargains in the municipal court?
Plea bargains are necessary, one. But I think plea bargains probably started with a lawyer who had the notion that everything is negotiable. So why not try to negotiate a better deal for my client rather than going to trial? And I think that just took off. And now it's become more of a judicial economy. With that many cases, there is no way you can try every case in municipal court. If you did, you would be there all day, all night. So it's necessary, but it serves that purpose. But the defendant also gets the benefit of it, meaning that the defendant can negotiate what he's willing to plead to. For those individuals who know they've done something wrong and they have a lot of charges, they can say, you know what, rather than going to trial, can I plead to this and get this sentence? So he knows exactly what he's going to get going in and not leaving it up to the judge to decide for him. So some people like the surety of knowing this is my sentence, this is my charges that I'm going to plead to, but then others, they'll take their chances and go on trial. So, but I think it is necessary, definitely necessary. But the misconception is that it's not up to the judges. It's between the prosecutor and the defense attorney. The judges have no say-so in the plea bargaining process. So if the two come up with an agreement, now the judge can reject the agreement, but generally the judge won't. If they come up with that agreement, they'll honor that agreement.
So I think there's some concern that defendants can be pushed into plea bargains unfairly or too often. What do you think about that?
Now, In municipal court, I don't see that happening, but I can see that happening in common pleas court. Common pleas court, there's a lot more riding on the outcome of the case. More jail time, more fines, possible prison. So I think with common pleas court, individuals tend to plea more because of what is known around the community as trial tax. All right, so that's a term.
Trial tax?
Trial tax.
Okay.
And trial tax is what has come about when individuals think that they were penalized more harshly because they went to trial rather than taking a plea bargain.
Oh.
So that's why you have that question of, do individuals think that, you know, they're forced into plea bargains? It's like, well, the prosecutor is offering me 3 years. If I go to trial, I can get 11 years or 15 years. Do I want to take that chance? If I'm found guilty, then I'm not going to be offered that same 3 years. I'm going to get the higher amount. So yeah, it is a consideration at that level, but in municipal court, I don't think so. It's more of a convenience than facing that trial tax.
Okay, thanks. One final question, unless you have like 30 seconds to get any questions, additional questions that you want in, because
No
I'm going to
questions
ask the
from
last
outside?
question. Looks like we've got them all.
Okay.
Are there any questions that you wish we would have asked?
I mean, there's so much about municipal court. Not any questions, but, you know, some comments.
Okay.
Maybe. So, you know, one, as far as voting and the right to vote and what registering to vote means. Registering to vote means that, one, you get to serve on those juries. If you're not registered to vote, you can't be selected for the jury panel. And two, you get to vote. We need your vote. Everyone that's running, we're running hard, and we need individuals to vote for us in order to work for you. So that's what I want to say about voting. But just about municipal court, I encourage everyone, and you know, it's a fun place. Go to municipal court, sit in courtrooms, watch what happens, watch the small claims rooms, watch eviction court, you know, watch the different judges. All the judges have personalities of their own. No two are alike. And learn what is really at stake in municipal court. And then do your homework on who you are electing to be judge.
Okay.
I mean, make sure the judges are experienced, you know, and make sure they are patient, make sure that they are fair, make sure that they are the people that you would want to be in front of if you were filing a lawsuit or charged with a crime.
Is it true that in Hamilton County, the jury pools are drawn from not only registered voters, but people who voted in the last year?
I know you have to be a registered voter, so it comes from the voter registration.
Uh-huh.
I don't know exactly how the jury commissioner picks those names.
Okay.
I don't know if it's random or it's based on what you said in the last year.
I'll get a definitive answer and I'll put it in the comments.
Yes.
Okay.
But see the jury commissioner.
Got it.
Yes.
All right. Well, we are about to wrap up then. Thank you so much for being with us. Do you have any concluding comments?
No, that's
I don't want to cut you. Okay.
No, good.
So thank you again for being with us. Tune in next week for Q&A with Kareem Moffitt on, I believe it's Thursday, but there'll be an announcement on our page. Thank you again for being with us, and have a good night.